Welcome to this introduction to referencing. I'm Miss Rose, I'm the head librarian. In this video, I'm going to introduce referencing and plagiarism. Once you've listened to it, you'll need to watch a further video or take a look at one of our handouts for the specifics for your required style of referencing. So this is part one. This presentation without audio is on the school library's Instagram account at King School Library, so you can save it in Instagram if you prefer. So what is referencing? Referencing is a standardised way in which we firstly acknowledge the work of others and secondly demonstrate that our research is informed by certain identifiable ideas or theories. It's a key part of academic writing because if you can reference properly, then it shows that you understand how to use the work of other scholars, including your peers, to develop your own insights into a subject and spark new ideas. When we don't reference, whether accidentally or dishonestly, it's called plagiarism. So the first step towards good referencing is to do the research. You can't reference properly if you haven't understood your topic, found some ideas from credible theorists, and considered how what you think fits into the wider research context. You need to understand who the leading theorists in the field are. In your area of study, when you're choosing the words of Mannering over Wilson or Godfrey over Pike, for example, you need to know why. They might all have published on the topic, but if you're choosing one over the other when researching, you need to have a reason. Coming higher up your search results list on Google Scholar is not good enough. You need to assess their credibility as a reliable source. Choose the best sources that give you a variety of credible information to work with. The number and type of sources you use will depend on your topic, but remember that you'll need general overviews, individual criticism and theories, as well as the in-depth data and primary source material. That won't all come in one package from one supplier. You'll need a variety of books, articles, reports perhaps, in print as well as online. There's no one-stop shop, not even Google Scholar or JSTOR, I'm afraid. Take a look at the library area on the intranet. There's the library catalogue for printed books and journals, as well as lists of e-resources for online research in all subject areas. So here's a top tip. It's always a good idea to summarise the different ways of looking at your topic of interest, the different theories people might hold, and the currency of those theories. Are they current or are they outdated? Old doesn't necessarily mean out of date, and new doesn't necessarily mean better. Then you can list the main exponents of those theories. You can consider what your perspective on the topic might be. Don't ever feel like you can't contribute your own perspective or that it won't be as valid as a published author's perspective. It's important that you put your own spin on things. Just make sure it's rooted in a secure grasp of what is already known about the topic. You may want to challenge an assumed perspective. You might find examples that don't fit how we currently conceive of something. You might have a new way of looking at an old problem. Find your story and then use your research to support your argument, adding weight and credibility to your own ideas, making sure you refer the reader to the original material. Okay, so enough about research. Now it's step 2, the bit we usually think about when we think about referencing. There are 2 elements here. There's the citation, which is when you refer to a specific information source and list where you found this piece of information. This happens in the body of your writing, whenever you mention something derived from things that you've read or watched or heard from someone else. And then there's the bibliography, sometimes called a reference list. This is a list of all the information sources you've used to research your work. There are many styles of citation, and depending on what style of referencing you're required to use, your citation may be a footnote, which is when you list the source at the foot of the page, an endnote, when you list the source at the end of the chapter or book, or an in-text citation, where you list the source in brackets at the end of the sentence. There are pros and cons to each style. Your bibliography should always start on a new page, at the end of your document. Each new item should be typed on a new line and it should be sorted alphabetically by author's surname. If you have the same author listed multiple times, then you should list those sources in date order also. Bibliographies can be much more interesting than they first seem. For a librarian and for a teacher, your bibliography can be very revealing. It's like looking at someone's personal music collection. You can pick up quite a few clues about someone's personality, their worldview, or their level of understanding, simply by looking at what's there and what's not there. If you find a theorist you're really interested in, you can often look at their references to find out more about that topic and what they found interesting to read. It's like getting a personal recommendation. It's also a good way to test the credibility of someone. If you look at their bibliography and you see they've only listed a few sources and those sources are not generally considered to be trustworthy, or that there are glaring and unexplained omissions in their choice of reading on a topic, then you can immediately tell that they're not going to be the most academically fruitful person to read, and in that case, save yourself the time and find something better to read. Now, as I mentioned previously, different referencing styles require different formats. But these different styles and formats all follow the same basic formula. When you use a source, you will need to list the author or creator of that source, the title of that source, the publication details, which should include the name of the publisher, the location of the publisher, and the date of publication. And depending on what type of source it is, you might also have to list when you accessed it and how. This is so that you or someone else can find the original source at a later date. This isn't just so that they can check you've referenced correctly, but it's really helpful if the reader or marker wants to learn more about what's just been referred to. The different styles and formats may want you to list these things in different orders, or to put commas or full stops in different places, but the basic principles are the same. When you read something, you should always make a note of these things. Don't just list the title and author and think you'll come back to the rest. Believe me, it's never that easy. Keep a list of things you've read, watched or listened to with all of the required information. You won't know at the start of researching your topic if you'll use it in your final work, but at least you'll have a note of it. Be aware that publication dates can vary from book to book, so make sure you list that correctly. That quote on page 45 in the 2012 book may not be on page 45 in the 2014 updated version, even if the content in those books is exactly the same. And that mistake could land you with a charge of plagiarism. Also keep a note of the date you last checked a web page. If that web page is deleted between handing in your work and your work being marked, in most cases we can use that date to identify what the web page looked like on that day, even if the web page itself has been deleted. Common styles are MHRA, which is popular in the humanities subjects. Harvard is often used by the sciences, and we even have our own in-house style at King's. So today we're going to work with the King's style. You can find full guidance for this on the school intranet. You can visit the library area on the intranet and select Library Guides for referencing help.